Hey, hold on, this shit ain't funny. It ain't funny, but it is.
Hey, Couture Bays, it's your girl Britt Bragg going live with the Bree Talk and Bay Squad. We have to talk about Dr. Alicia Watkins having all the smoke with Cardi B. Now, before we get into that, let's like, comment, and subscribe. Tap that notification bell so you can have all the updates and alerts. And remember, opinions are not facts. Everything we say here is allegedly and for entertainment purposes solely. So sit back, relax, sip you some apple juice or my favorite, the vegan water, and let's get into the mess, shall we?
Feelings about a rapper called Cardi B. And based on a lot of the things that I've seen from her in the past couple of years, it seems like to me that she has fetal alcohol syndrome. 2017 was the very first time that I learned about her. And in listening to her music, I said, wow, this is really interesting. Somebody with a speech impediment wants to become a rapper. I started thinking, wow, she's named after alcohol. Her name is Cardi B, and she has a sister who's named Hennessy, who's also named after beverage. It seems like there's like a cognitive delay here in the way she talks and the way her rationale and the way she speaks and her language and everything about that comes together. I remember thinking, wow, this seems like someone who for sure is undiagnosed that has fetal alcohol syndrome. If you look at one of the symptoms of fetal alcohol syndrome is these facial features. And here you can see it's like a small head, a low nasal bridge, small eye openings, like a shorter kind of pitched kind of nose in this. And so when I saw a picture of Cardi B with no makeup on, as a social worker who's trained in making assessments in children and adults, if she was in my office, I would immediately start asking her questions about, could you tell me a little more about what's going on, the nature in which you were conceived, and what it was like, any information that she could give me about her mother during conception and what the pregnancy was like. Because if you look here, and she has this pinched, her eyes are kind of small, and if you see her with no makeup on, actually if you look at her with makeup on, you can still see it, but it's very well pronounced when you see pictures of her with no makeup on. And here I have a picture of an adult with fetal alcohol syndrome. And there are some similarities. You look at this picture and this picture, there are some similarities in terms of just physically. She has the facial features of someone with fetal alcohol syndrome. The thing is that Cardi B is so popular in our culture, and this is a very emotionally charged topic. And I understand that she's very talented. And I just want to say, just because you have a birth defect or a learning disorder, that doesn't mean that you can't be viable citizen, right, in our community. It's just that these sort of things can happen. And mothers, need to be aware that when they're in, the position where they could possibly have children, that they need to really take caution about alcohol consumption. And so that's one of the reason why we want to bring this to your attention, because she could be a champion. I could see in the future Cardi B being a spokesperson and a champion of fetal alcohol syndrome to raise awareness, because it's so common in our population. And a lot of people have it and it goes undiagnosed. I had a doctor come into my classroom and talk to our students about fetal alcohol syndrome, and I was blown away. He said very little alcohol can cause fetal alcohol syndrome. I'm like, good grief, I did not know, because I'm teaching this module about, alcohol. It's kind of textbook stuff. But when I had the doctor come into the classroom and he did like a talk to the social work students, he was like, listen, we deal with this every day. Please, please, please educate your clients on fetal alcohol syndrome, because it is way more known than you ever know. And you want to give your children, and you want to make sure that you're working with clients to give your children good footing before they even start. So one of the second areas with someone with fetal alcohol syndrome is poor impulse control. Also, having difficulties in school, having a hard time getting along with others. And if we use Cardi B as an illustration, we could definitely, look at some of her past and say, maybe there were some issues with impulse control, because back in 2008, and then a couple of years later, she had some assault charges. And I think you remember, it was really popular how she took a shoe and threw it at Nicki Minaj or something at an award show, red carpet event, where she had some hostile interchanges with some other individuals. And so looking at that impulse, that impulse control, that's definitely would be a sign of fetal alcohol syndrome in adults. The third symptom of fetal alcohol syndrome is this kind of cognitive delay. And, sometimes her, there's some signs of poor judgment and poor reasoning skills. And I know I've seen like videos with her and her daughter. By the way, I think she's an excellent mother. It really does seem like Cardi B really connects very well with her children. And but I've seen some videos where it seems to me that she behaves very childish, like with her noises. To me, those are the behaviors that my children did when they were young. And they grew out of it. And so it's just interesting that Cardi B has become popular with a lot of her and all of that stuff, which is really funny. She is pretty hilarious and pretty funny. But I do notice, like when I look at it with a clinical eye, I'm like, wait a minute, those are sounds that a child makes. But it's kind of funny coming out of her mouth. And then I was reading something on Cardi B that she has a history of stealing money from men. And, and people were asking her about it, and they're like, wait a minute, you're manipulating men for money? And she's like, her rationale for it was like, yeah, well, they deserved it, or they shouldn't have treated me bad, or they were being this way. Like, that's pretty abusive to treat somebody in that way. And so just like looking at her antics, I find her to be like really childish in a lot of ways. And also like her rationale in her sort of thinking in terms of, it's okay for me to get that money, as she would say, from men. Based on what we are seeing is that she clearly has 4 strong symptoms of fetal alcohol syndrome. I'm thinking about my own pregnancies. It's like, it's a while before you know you're pregnant. Like conception happens and it's not like 6 or 7 weeks later until you realize that you're pregnant. So during that critical moment when you're just clueless, you're not tuned in, you just don't know, but it could be a possibility that you are pregnant. It's important to really be mindful. I love the mindful piece about alcohol consumption, particularly when you're in that childbearing age and things can happen. Things can happen very quickly. You need to educate these moms. Say, listen, before you were drinking alcohol and it was only affecting you. Now you're drinking alcohol and not only is it affecting you, but it's affecting your future. Because now you could have a child who's going to have these delays in school and they're not going to be all that they need to be growing up. And then, they're going to have difficulty with attention. Just think about that. You have difficulty. Think about what the symptom is. Difficulty, hard time in school and a hard time getting along with others. That means they're going to come to school and they're going to be so impulsive and so ADHD and moving around everything. Nobody wants to be around Johnny because Johnny is disruptive and Johnny won't listen and Johnny's not fun to play with. And think about what that does. And to think that you could have played a part in that because you couldn't find a healthy way to deal with your stress. So we got to change some of the culture going on because our future, some of the things we adhere to in our culture is counter to us being successful as a
First
people.
things first, I have to say, Dr. Alicia, that was a very informative video. I really enjoyed it. It made me want to go research it. But I did see this online with Tasha K. Y'all know Tasha K owes Cardi B some money. So she putting this up there is a whole key. I caught the shade. At the end of the day, y'all know I said Cardi B has a 3rd grade education. And this really expounded on my thoughts in the beginning. I never would have thought of alcohol fetal syndrome and then break it down the way that she did. Just so articulate. I love when Black women, get on a doctor bag. Shout out to Dr. Boyce Watkins' wife. For those that do not know. At the end of the day, I'm intrigued. I'm interested and I want to do a little bit more research. I didn't know so many women who were pregnant suffered from alcoholism into this state. And I didn't know just a little bit of alcohol could do that. Ciao. That's why they say be the healthiest version you could be when you decide to go and get pregnant. That's for those who like to plan and not them oops babies. Shout out to the oops babies though. But those are just my thoughts. What are your opinions, Bae Squad? Comment down below. I gotta go. Bye, hoes.